There is a strange weight that clings to the heart when it is always running after someone who does not turn their eyes toward us. At first, we may not notice it. In the beginning, there is excitement, a spark of hope that if we give more, try harder, prove ourselves enough, then the one we long for will finally open their heart. This pursuit feels alive, almost intoxicating, because the chase gives us a purpose. But slowly, without realizing, the sweetness fades and the burden grows heavier than we ever imagined. We begin to lose track of where we end and where the other person begins. Our spirit, once whole and free, bends itself into shapes just to be noticed, just to be worthy in their eyes. The tragedy is that in this bending, we forget who we truly are. The more we run after someone who does not value us, the more our worth seems to dissolve. Their indifference becomes a mirror in which we search for ourselves, but all we see is emptiness reflected back. Every gesture of kindness, every attempt to please, every effort to win them over begins to feel like pouring water into a vessel with no bottom. It never fills, it never satisfies, it never brings the response we secretly hunger for. And yet something within us continues the pursuit, convinced that if we just run a little faster, if we just give a little more, we will finally arrive at the destination of love and recognition. But in truth, the more desperately we chase, the more invisible we become. Not only to the one we chase, but to ourselves. Our identity slips through our fingers like sand. We stop asking, "Who am I? What do I deserve?" Instead, we ask, "What do they want from me? What must I change to keep them?" It is here that the soul begins to suffer. For the human spirit was not created to live as a shadow to another's light, but to shine in its own radiance. Yet when we chase someone who does not value us, we give them the power to define our light, to decide if we are worthy of warmth, affection, or belonging. This burden of pursuit is heavier than any physical load, because it crushes not the body but the essence of the self. It is like running endlessly on a road that leads nowhere, exhausting every ounce of energy, but never arriving at a place of rest. The heart grows tired, the spirit bends low, and a quiet despair seeps into our being, whispering that perhaps we are not enough, that perhaps love was never meant for us. And yet this heaviness carries within it a hidden truth. For the very moment we recognize the burden, the very instant we see how much of ourselves we have given away in the chase, something shifts. We begin to sense that the weight does not belong to us, and that letting go is possible. But before that freedom comes, we must fully face the reality. Chasing after someone who does not value us is not love, it is self-abandonment, and the price of that abandonment is nothing less than the loss of our own soul's peace. When the chasing finally ends, when you have given your last ounce of energy and decide to step back, there is at first no relief. Instead, there is silence, a hollow silence that echoes louder than the sound of rejection itself. For so long your mind was filled with the noise of pursuit, the endless strategies, the questions, the hopes and fears tangled together. When that noise ceases, the absence feels like standing in a vast empty room. You almost long for the old pain, because at least the pain kept you occupied. Now there is nothing. The person you were running after is no longer the center of your movements, and without them you feel like a dancer with no stage, a traveler with no map. This silence can be frightening. It feels like a small death, the death of an attachment that once gave you purpose. You may feel as though you have lost a part of yourself, because for so long your identity was tied to their presence, or at least to the pursuit of it. The days seem longer, the nights heavier, as if time itself stretches to magnify the emptiness you now face. Many turn back in this stage, running once again after the same person simply to escape the silence. But those who remain, those who have the courage to stand still and endure the hollow space, begin to notice something extraordinary. Within that silence, another voice slowly begins to whisper. At first it is faint, easily drowned out by memories and regrets. But with patience, the whisper grows clearer. It is the voice of your own soul, the part of you that has been hidden behind the noise of longing and rejection. It has always been there, waiting quietly, like a patient friend standing in the shadows. Now that the chase is over, this voice finally has room to speak. It does not speak in the language of desperation or pleading. Instead, it asks questions that cut deeper than the surface. Why did you forget me? Why did you place another human being above your own worth? Why did you silence my voice for the sake of their approval? These questions are not meant to condemn, but to awaken. They remind you that beneath the layers of longing and pursuit, there exists a self that has always deserved love, attention, and care. In the beginning, hearing this voice may be uncomfortable. It may even stir anger or grief, because it reveals how much of yourself you gave away to someone who never cherished it. Yet this discomfort is necessary. It is the soil in which awakening takes root. For when you face the silence long enough, you begin to see that the emptiness is not truly empty. It is space being cleared. Space for your true self to emerge, space for your forgotten worth to take form again, space for the fire of dignity to be rekindled. So, while the silence after letting go feels like loss, it is in truth the first sign of freedom. The chase has ended, and in its place the soul begins to breathe again. It is here, in the stillness, that you rediscover the sound of your own being waiting to guide you back home. The voice that rises in the silence is not loud, not demanding, but steady and piercing. It asks questions that at first feel unsettling, as if a hidden part of you has suddenly stepped into the light. Why did you forget me? Why did you place another human being on the throne of your worth? Why did you silence my presence in order to chase a fleeting shadow? These are not easy questions to hear, for they awaken you to the truth of how far you wandered away from yourself. Yet in this confrontation lies the seed of healing. You begin to realize that your pursuit of the other was not only about them. Beneath the desire for their attention or affection was something deeper, something far more personal. You were searching for a reflection of your own worth, a confirmation of your own value. In the one you chased, you saw a mirror, and in that mirror you hoped to find proof that you mattered. But the tragedy of using another as a mirror is that if they do not see your value, then you begin to believe it does not exist. Their blindness becomes your blindness. Their refusal to acknowledge you becomes your own refusal to recognize yourself. As the inner voice speaks, you come to understand that what you sought outside was always meant to be discovered within. The longing for approval, the hunger for recognition, the ache for love, all of these were signs pointing you back toward yourself. They were signals from the depths of your being, reminding you that you have not yet embraced the fullness of who you are. The chase was never about them. It was about your unclaimed soul waiting to be seen by you. When this realization dawns, it is both painful and liberating. Painful because you see how much of your strength you gave away in the search for someone else to complete you. Liberating because you now understand that the power to affirm your worth does not lie in the hands of another. It has always been your own task, your own sacred responsibility. The inner voice continues, stop bowing before idols of flesh and bone. Stop begging for crumbs from tables where you were never invited to feast. Come back to me, to the self you abandoned in pursuit of illusions. For I am the source of the love you seek. I am the root of the strength you long for. I am the gold you have been chasing in others. To hear this voice is to stand before a mirror that finally tells the truth. not a mirror distorted by rejection, but one polished by silence and self-reflection. In it you see not the emptiness reflected by another's indifference, but the light of your own being. This is the beginning of reclaiming your value, not as something to be given by another, but as something that flows naturally from within. Thus, the questions of the inner self are not a punishment, they are an invitation. An invitation to stop wandering in search of external validation and to turn inward where the treasure has been waiting all along. When you finally stop projecting your energy outward, when you cease the endless chase, something extraordinary begins to unfold within you. It is as though the pieces of a fractured self, scattered across the terrain of longing and disappointment, start to return to their rightful place. Every ounce of attention, every sigh of hope, every gesture that once flowed toward another now flows back into you, filling the hollows that had been carved by rejection and neglect. You begin to feel the weight of your own presence, not as a burden, but as a force of quiet power, steady and unshakable. In the past, you may have mistaken your pursuit of someone else for love, but what you are now discovering is that the true love you sought externally always resided within. The figure you chased was a reflection, a mirror, an image of what you thought was missing. You hoped that in their eyes you would find validation, that in their attention you would find worth. But mirrors cannot give what they do not hold, and shadows cannot illuminate what they do not carry. Only by reclaiming your own energy, by turning it inward, can you begin to recognize the fullness of your being. This reclamation of self is not instantaneous, it is subtle and profound. At first, it manifests in small ways, a newfound calm in moments that once brought anxiety, a quiet confidence when confronted with choices you previously feared to make. You begin to notice the clarity of thought that comes when you are no longer bound to another's approval. Decisions that once felt agonizing become simple because they no longer hinge on someone else's imagined judgment. The chaos of seeking validation outside your own soul is replaced by the serene authority of self-possession. As your energy returns to you, so too does your dignity, long buried beneath layers of compromise and self-doubt. There is a sense of awakening, a rising awareness that the power you sought in another has been within your grasp all along. Strength and clarity flow naturally, no longer dependent on the whims of someone else. And as these gifts emerge, you begin to notice something even more extraordinary. The world itself seems different. Situations that once felt overwhelming now appear manageable. Relationships that once drained you now hold the potential for reciprocity, and even solitude, once feared, becomes a sanctuary. It is in this moment, in this quiet reclamation, that you realize the profound paradox of the human heart. The very act of letting go, of turning inward, is what restores freedom and power. By withdrawing your energy from those who could not value it, you illuminate the path back to yourself. You discover that the love and respect you sought externally were never owed by another, they were owed by you to yourself. This return of energy is the foundation of transformation. It is the invisible architecture of your renewed life, the invisible scaffolding that supports your dignity and purpose. With each breath you feel more present in your own skin, more attuned to the rhythm of your own being. The pursuit that once defined you fades into memory, replaced by a presence that is grounded, resilient, and whole. And so, in reclaiming what was always yours, you step into a life that is no longer borrowed, no longer conditional. You become the keeper of your own worth, the guardian of your own light, and the witness to the profound truth that freedom, strength, and clarity are born not from chasing, but from coming home to oneself. As the weight of chasing someone who could not value you lifts, you begin to notice the subtle shedding of chains, chains that were never truly visible, but had bound you tightly for so long. They were chains forged from expectation, from fear, from the constant need to prove your worth to someone else. Each attempt to gain their approval, each compromise of your own needs, each silent moment of enduring neglect was a link in those chains. You may not have realized it at the time, but every act of surrender to another's indifference tightened them around your spirit. And now, as you step away from the pursuit, those links begin to fall one by one, clattering softly to the ground, leaving you lighter, freer, and more unencumbered than you have been in years. The first sensation is almost imperceptible, a quietness in the chest where tension once resided, a sense of space opening within you. As you move through the days, this space grows, and with it comes a feeling you may have thought impossible, the posture of your own self-possession. You begin to stand differently, not with arrogance, but with a subtle straightness that reflects a reclaiming of your inner ground. Your movements are no longer dictated by fear of loss or the desire to please. They are guided by your own rhythm, your own sense of balance. In this new alignment, you discover a surprising grace, a dignity that has been waiting silently within, patiently enduring while you chased shadows. The heart, long trained to race at the mere thought of their absence or indifference, begins to beat with a quiet rhythm. The panic that once seized you in moments of silence, the longing that once consumed your nights, gradually softens. Instead of being pulled outward toward the whims of another, your energy begins to settle inward, rooting you in the soil of your own presence. And in this rooting, a profound realization takes hold. The love and approval you were seeking externally can never fill the emptiness you carry within yourself. That space was never meant to be occupied by someone else. It was always yours, reserved for the cultivation of your own heart. With this newfound alignment comes clarity. You see the patterns of your past pursuits with fresh eyes, the futility, the exhaustion, the quiet erosion of self, and though it may stir sadness, it also brings wisdom. You understand that freedom is not granted by the other, nor is it a reward for effort. It is reclaimed when you stop giving away your energy to those who cannot value it. Every step you take now is lighter, more deliberate, more authentic. You are no longer a shadow chasing another's light. You are your own source of illumination. In this process, even solitude transforms. It is no longer a state to be feared or endured, but a sanctuary in which your soul can breathe. The quiet is no longer empty. It is a canvas for self-reflection, self-affirmation, and the careful reconstruction of a self that has been neglected for too long. And within this sanctuary, the chains finally fall away entirely. You realize that you are whole, complete, and undiminished, no longer dependent on the approval or presence of anyone who failed to recognize your value. Through the shedding of these invisible chains, you step into a life that is no longer borrowed, a life that is guided by your own integrity, your own dignity, and your own rhythm. And in this emergence, you discover the most profound truth of all. When you stop chasing those who do not value you, you are not losing anything. You are awakening to the vastness, the strength, and the beauty that have always resided within you. When the pursuit ends and the chains of dependence fall away, something profound begins to unfold within you. You step into a space where you are no longer the hunted, the one who bends and sacrifices for the recognition of another. You are no longer subject to the ebb and flow of someone else's attention or the fragile whims of their approval. In this space, you become the sovereign of your own soul, fully aware that your worth does not hinge upon external validation. The realization washes over you gently at first, then with increasing clarity. The love, respect, and dignity you sought outside have always been your own to claim. This awakening is not instantaneous. It begins as a quiet knowing that you no longer need to prove yourself, that you no longer need to perform for someone who cannot see your value. You notice it in the subtleties, in the ease of your breath, in the steadiness of your gaze, in the quiet confidence that arises when you make decisions aligned with your own truth rather than with another's expectation. There is a freedom here that is unlike any other, the freedom to exist fully, to honor your own feelings, to nurture your own needs, and to walk in the world with the dignity that has been restored to you. Paradoxically, when you embody this self-possession, the world begins to respond differently. People who once ignored or dismissed you may turn toward you, drawn not by manipulation or pleading, but by the magnetism of your self-respect. Yet, by this point, it no longer matters. Their recognition is no longer the measure of your worth. What matters is the inner light that has been rekindled, the fire that burns independently of anyone else's approval. You have discovered that strength is not borrowed, that validation is not given, and that love is not found outside. It is awakened within. In this space, solitude becomes a sanctuary rather than a punishment. Time spent alone is no longer a reminder of loss, but an opportunity to explore the depths of your own being. You begin to see the beauty of your own mind, the complexity of your emotions, and the richness of your spirit. The silence that once felt empty now hums with potential. In these moments, you can listen to yourself deeply, reflect on your journey, and honor the lessons learned from the pain of chasing someone who could not value you. The final transformation is subtle, yet undeniable. You stand taller, not with arrogance, but with authenticity. You speak and act from a place of integrity, guided by your own compass rather than by fear of rejection. You begin to attract into your life what aligns with your true nature, relationships that are reciprocal, experiences that nurture your soul, opportunities that honor your worth. You are no longer scattered, no longer diminished, no longer seeking validation where it cannot exist. And the greatest revelation of all emerges in quiet clarity. When you stop chasing someone who does not value you, you do not lose. Instead, you awaken. You reclaim the gold that has always resided within you, the self-respect, the dignity, the love, the strength. You discover that the only validation you need has been within you all along, waiting patiently for you to return, waiting for you to recognize that your soul was never dependent on another, that your worth is inherent, and that your freedom is your birthright.